Hello and welcome to this Price a Job tutorial. In this video we're going to take a look at estimating concrete floors. This is the first video in the Ground Floors module playlist, so to get started let's create a new project. We'll select the project drop down menu here and add new project. And we'll call this one Ground Floors Tutorials. And save. And this creates a new blank project for us to fill in. Within the ground floors category we have 4 different modules: screed floors, concrete floors, timber floors, and beam and block floors. Let's start this playlist with concrete floors. So we'll select the module and then create. And this opens our concrete floors module. A rather exciting development that we're proud to unveil is an upgrade to our sketch panel. If you're already familiar with Price a Job, it's likely that you've come to appreciate the interactive images that are used to illustrate your build. And these are still available. However, we've added a new functionality called 3D Model that, in addition to representing all of your various measurements for the various components and stages of your build, also allows you to grab the image and rotate it around to see it from different angles. And we expect there will be times that this will be a very useful function. So to get started with our concrete floor estimate here, first we have to input the area of our floor. So if we know the area, we can just input it here within the area field, or we can use the area calculator. And we can either use our shapes calculator to build the shape of our room and input all the various measurements. So for example, we could choose a trapezoid and set the various measurements. Or if we've set up our rooms tab in advance, we can just click on the rooms tab here and add the various rooms that we've already preset. And I haven't added any rooms yet, so let's just do one room quickly here. We'll just go to the rooms tab, we'll add a floor and add a room. And we'll call this location 1 is fine. We'll just grab our edit tool and set our room. Let's just make it a little bit wider and a little bit longer. There. Now we have calculated the ceiling area, floor area, perimeter, height, and walls area of this main room. So now when we go back to our estimate pane, we can go back to the concrete floors module, go back to our area calculator, and now rather than having to calculate the area of this room separately, it's saved within our rooms tab, and we can just click the plus button to add it to our area, and then save. And this adds this area to our module, and Price a Job instantly does all the calculations for each of the various stages. So next we can set our excavation depth, and we can see here that Price a Job has automatically calculated the total thickness of our slab, including the hardcore, the sand blinding, the insulation, concrete, and screed, for a total thickness of 465 millimeters. However, if we observe within our sketch pane, and we'll just expand this for a closer look, we can see the total thickness of the slab reaches the damp-proof course. However, the soil level is below DPC. So if we look at our excavation depth, we can see that the DPC level is 150 millimeters above ground. So this 150 millimeters is deducted from the 465 millimeters of total thickness for an excavation depth of 315 millimeters. And this is all done automatically for you. Next we'll take a look at the excavation stage. Price a Job has automatically calculated the total volume of excavation to be 7.1 cubic meters, and to do this by machine would entail a cost of £511. We can also select by hand. However, the cost of this would double due to the labor involved. So we'll keep ours selected as machine. We can then select the machine type that we choose to use, and by clicking the cog settings, we can check and update if necessary the productivity in cubic meters per hour, the delivery and collection cost in pounds, and the fuel consumption in liters per hour. Next we'll need to dispose of the soil that's been excavated, and we'll see that the soil volume is 8.6 cubic meters. And if we compare that to the 7.1 cubic meters that we excavated, we see that there's been some expansion. And this can be modified here within the cog settings, where we can see that the expansion rate has been set at 22%. And depending on our soil quality, we can adjust this if necessary. Here we can select the load method of the soil disposal, either by machine or by hand. And Price a Job has automatically calculated that we'll require 1.4 8-yard skips in order to dispose of this volume of soil. This irregular number of skips will be added to other modules that may require skips for disposal, so that we don't send any skips away half empty. However, if this is the only module that we'll be using that requires skips, we can just click the plus button to round this up to the next nearest whole number. Next we'll take a look at the hardcore fill stage. Notice that each of these stages has a toggle select, and if we remove that, our sketch pane immediately updates to remove that stage from our image. And we can use this anytime there's a stage that's not required by our structural specifications. So for the hardcore fill, again, PriceJob has calculated the volume of hardcore required at 3.4 cubic meters at a thickness of 150 millimeters. And we can adjust this if necessary. We'll set that for 200. And again, our sketch pane has automatically updated. And notice that as we select these areas, indicator arrows on our sketch pane show us the material being measured. Next, we can select between either crushed concrete or the much higher quality MOT Type 1. And under the cog settings, we can set the hardcore ratio in kilograms per cubic meter. Next, we'll take a look at sand blinding. And the sand blinding is used to protect the membrane layer from the hardcore layer and to smooth out the uneven surface of the hardcore. So we only need 50 millimeters here for thickness, and we can adjust under the cog settings the sand ratio in kilograms per cubic meter. Next is the damp-proof membrane, and we can use the drop-down list here to select from a variety of products. If there's a product that we prefer to use that's not shown in the drop-down list, we can use Edit Pack, and we can choose other materials from the PriceJob library or add a new material of our own. If we're adding a new material, we just input the title, the units, the price, the category, and the website link, and then save it to the PriceJob library for further use. In this case, we'll just stick with the default vapor barrier. And again, if your specifications do not require a damp-proof membrane, you can just deselect this to remove it from the estimate. And this might be the case if you're building a concrete floor for an outbuilding like a garage. Next, let's take a look at the insulation layer. Again, the system has calculated that we require 22 square meters, and there's a variety of products we can choose from. In this case, 75 millimeters might suffice, but we'll just stick with the default 100 millimeters. Next is the perimeter insulation, and we can see this if we zoom in on our sketch pane here. And I'll just rotate the image around a little bit for a better look. And here we can see the insulated perimeter, and building regulations require that all external walls have a 25 to 35 millimeter insulation to stop thermal bridging through the wall. So here we can select from the drop-down list the product we choose to use, in this case 25 millimeter. We might increase that to 30 millimeters if we want, or if this is for an interior wall, we can just deselect the perimeter altogether. Next is the protective layer. And this is just a very thin vapor control membrane, much thinner than our damp-proof course, and it may be somewhere in the 1200 gauge range. And really its main purpose is just to prevent any corrosion between the concrete and the insulation foil. So again, we can deselect this if it's not needed, and our sketch updates, or we can use the product drop-down menu to select a product from the PriceJob library, or Edit Pack to add a new material. Next, we'll take a look at the concrete slab. And again, PriceJob has calculated the volume required at 2.24 cubic meters. And here we can set the concrete thickness. And we can change this if necessary. Let's change that to 250 millimeters. And again, our sketch updates to show us the new measurement. And while we're clicked in the thickness field, our sketch is updated with indicator arrows to point out the measurement we're adjusting. The concrete can be supplied as either a ready mix, a mix on site, or a concrete pump. If we're using a ready mix, we can select our concrete mix from the options below. If we're mixing on site, we can set our cement ratio or choose a custom ratio of cement and ballast. And if we're using a concrete pump, we can specify the number of pumps, and under the cog settings, we can adjust the productivity of the pump in cubic meters per day, the minimum concrete load in cubic meters, and the part load charge in pounds per cubic meter. And you'll notice that PriceJob has automatically used that information to calculate our part load charge. Next, we can take a look at the reinforcement mesh. If we don't require a reinforcement mesh, we can just deselect that and it's removed from our estimate. By selecting this, we can choose either one layer or two, and then we can select the size of our mesh, either A142, 193, 252, or 393, or a custom mesh. And we can select that from the drop-down list here, a variety of A and B category meshes, or we can edit pack to add a different material. Under the cog settings, we can adjust the percentage of overlap for our mesh. Then we can input the spacers, whether we'll be using single chair spacers or continuous rebar. And we can set the spacing for these spacers. And the final layer of our concrete floor is the floor screed. And this is just a thin layer, only 65 millimeters in this case. We can adjust that if we wish. Let's change that to 75 millimeters. And we see that indicated on a sketch. And we can adjust the ratio of our screed here. Now we can minimize our sketch pane and review our various estimate stages to view the materials, labor, plant and tool required for each stage. If we need to adjust any of the prices, we can do so here just by overriding the value. And then it's highlighted in yellow to let us know that we've overridden the value for this material and updates our price estimate accordingly. If we want to revert back to the price of job system pricing, we can just click on the cog button here and reset. And this returns to the system pricing. If materials will be provided for us, and we're only quoting on the labor and plant and tool, we can use the filter icon here to filter out all materials. And now our estimate only includes the labor and plant and tool. However, this is only for this one module. If we'll be adding other modules that have materials included, then we would use the global filter here. And here we can specify which modules include either material, labor, plant and tool, or other costs, or we can just set all modules to include or exclude these calculations. So for now, we'll keep all modules including all calculations. And we'll close our global filter, and we can see our materials have been added back to our estimate again. Up at the top here, we can change the title of our module. Instead of concrete floor, we can call this living room floor. And this updates our module title here within our description. And likewise, our description has automatically been updating as we've been adding all of our various stages. So for example, if we were to remove any of these stages, we would see our description automatically update to reflect our changes. As we add them back in, the description automatically updates again as well. If we want to add any notes, we have the option to do so by clicking Add Note, and then we can add any notes that we want to use. So for example, we might use a symbol here, X for an exclusion, and then we would say dispose of soil on site. So then we could deselect the disposal of soil stage, and our automatic description is updated here to say disposal of surplus excavated materials not included, and here we have a note saying that it will be disposed on site. If instead of adding a manual note here, you prefer to edit the automatic descriptions, you can do so, and that's done by deselecting the automatic description function here. However, if you deselect the auto descriptions and make any changes, say we just remove this line here, because the automatic descriptions are now turned off, any further changes you make to your stages will not be automatically reflected in the description. And if you turn the automatic descriptions back on, your edits that you made previously are removed, and the description reverts back to its automatic settings. So if you have to edit any of the automatic descriptions, make sure you save that for last. Now when you go to the Reports tab, you see a nicely detailed quote with the living room floor that we titled, with all of the various descriptions, as well as exclusions listed here, and a complete listing of materials, labor, plant and tool, and total costs. Now, there's a great deal of customization you can do on this quote, starting with the title. You can change the title from quote to estimate, quotation, or proposal. For pricing, you can just show the grand total at the bottom, or you can show a subtotal for each module. In this case, the concrete floor's subtotal is $6,200. Or you can show also a complete breakdown of all the materials, labor, plant and tool, and other costs. You can also just show a simple quote that just has the description and grand total, or you can choose advanced and display the description or not, show or hide the materials, show or hide the labor, plant and tool and other costs. You can also choose to show or hide the pricing to just display a table of quantities, or conceal the units. The modules are each represented with an icon here, which we can show or hide by deselecting this. And we can change the bullet representation here. Right now it's set for automatic. We can set this for bullets, diamonds, squares, arrows, or none. We'll leave it set for automatic. And as well at the bottom, we can choose to add some project notes. So we'll select project notes here. And this opens a project notes area here that we can just add to as necessary. Or if we wish, we can use the plus icon here to select pre-written notes and disclaimers from the Price of Job library. If we need to edit any of these notes before we add them, we can select the edit icon here to make any changes. And when you finish your changes, close the editor and then click on the text you wish to add to your disclaimer. And it's automatically added to your notes here at the bottom. And if you would like to save these notes for use on other quotations, you can just go to the project note edit icon here and save this as a template. And then in future, let's just erase this. You can come back and select from the drop-down list My New Notes, and your previously saved disclaimer is added to the notes at the bottom of the quotation. Once you're done, you can either print the quotation, export it as a PDF, export it as a Word document, or email it directly to your client from right within Price of Job. And that is how to use the Concrete Floors module. Thank you for using Price of Job.